This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, I'm sitting here with Peter Franchot, who is the Chief Fiscal Officer of the state of Maryland, whose title is Comptroller of Maryland. And it's really my pleasure to be able to speak with him this afternoon and share his thoughts with all of you. You've been comptroller since 2007. That's a long time to handle a lot of money. What do you think your major achievements were during that time?
Well, I had a number of major achievements. First of all, we turned a relatively sleepy state agency of about 1,100 employees into a juggernaut of customer service. I spent a lot of time making sure that the existing directors knew I had their back, and I told them I would get the resources for them to do their job. But I wanted them to prepare to do some game-changing things as far as interacting with the public. And one of them was I wanted the 800,000 phone calls a year that come into our agency, because we handle tax, as you say, all the tax issues and tax collections for the state. I wanted to make sure that those were answered within 60 seconds by a live, friendly, professional, knowledgeable voice of a customer service representative from the comptroller's office. That required opening up satellite offices around the state and having call centers, so to speak, staffed in order to do that, and training people so that they were able to intellectually be able to help people who were calling. Anyway, that's just an example of what we did as far as customer service, and I think it's probably emblematic of my 16 years as comptroller that above all else, we just answer the damn phone.
That's a major achievement, really. Any other that you can think of?
Well, I've asked the agency to adopt my personal mantra, which is respect the taxpayer, respond to the taxpayer, get results for the taxpayer. And one of the areas that we're focused a lot on is so-called senior fraud, okay, where very clever criminals call elderly people on the through the telephone and pretend that they are real people who know members of their family or somehow are connected to their family, and bilk them of tens of thousands of dollars in their savings, et cetera, by getting their financial identity and their financial information and defrauding them. So I think along with customer service, we're also trying to protect our customers, particularly our elderly, from the abuse of financial crimes.
You know, I can amplify that. I was talking with Brandon Meganholt, who is with the Montgomery County Police, and last week he interviewed an 80-year-old woman who had sent $150,000 to Publishers Clearinghouse, and she was still asked to send more money and was waiting for a $10 million payoff to show up at her door the next day. It's just amazing and terrible. And I know you've been involved in trying to stem that. It's hard to stop, though, isn't it?
Well, the problem is that the fraudsters are very clever, and they'll move from agency to agency. They're used to attack our data system and our agency internet with very clever schemes to defraud the public treasury in Maryland by getting false tax refunds. Okay. We eliminated that through partnering with the private sector, particularly algorithmic solutions, which weed out the very sophisticated criminals from the law-abiding taxpayers. And what I find with the elderly abuse is that you don't have that protection because they're calling on your home phone or your cell phone, and they're very clever. They're not; these are professional con men or con women, and they are able to convince people that there's something good will happen if they give their financial information out. And we combine with our local law enforcement, with the Attorney General of Maryland, but also with the federal law enforcement, federal folks who protect against fraud. We've been able to make a small dent, but not as big a dent as we've made on tax fraud. Tax fraud is almost zero in Maryland because we've figured out who these people are and we're on to them. Unfortunately, they now have moved on to this population of elderly folks that are generally AARP readers and members. But they also go to other state agencies, and they're able to pillage county budgets and frankly, some state agency budgets, who are not as sophisticated in their defenses as we are in the tax agency.
Well, I know that you've been involved with it. Matter of fact, in 2018, you co-founded Protect Week. And you had a lot of people involved with that. You had AARP, Consumer Credit Counseling Services, the Maryland Department of Aging, Elders Safe, Maryland Attorney General's Office, and a host of other people. How did you come up with that idea, and do you think that's been a success?
Well, first of all, let me thank AARP, because it's a fabulous organization, and it's got a great track record as far as not just providing services and advice, but also protecting its members. So hats off to them for being part of Protect Week. But yeah, this is something that's especially important during the 2 years of that we've gone through with the COVID-19 pandemic, because fraud of elderly folks who are homebound and not really protected by the knowledge that you need to, when someone calls and says, we've got something that's going to reward you if you send us money. No, that's never the truth. I mean, it's too good to be true that somebody is calling and saying that I've won the lottery somewhere. So the Protect Week has been very successful. I'm proud of it. However, there's a tremendous amount of fraud, waste, and abuse going on as we speak, and it's more common because of COVID, and so many people are isolated. We're surmising, but hats off to AARP and the fellow members of Protect Week. We just need to keep reminding people that they should not give out anything over the telephone to anybody, no matter how persuasive they sound. I got a phishing text from someone who was pretending to be my cousin's. He or she was pretending to be my cousin by emailing me that they need my attention immediately, and they have some kind of problem, and that needed me to send them money or send them a gift card. You just have to discipline yourself. As soon as somebody calls who you don't know and doesn't sound familiar to you, you need to hang up just as quickly to avoid getting dragged into a rabbit hole of magical incantations that end up with you giving your financial information and getting defrauded. I'm sorry to hear about the person that lost $100,000. It's not uncommon. People have lost their entire savings. Some of them get that money back from responsible financial institutions. A lot of people, however, suffer the pain and guilt of losing what savings they have.
It's horrible. I shudder every time I think about it. But why are elders picked on more than anybody else?
Because elders are isolated, because many elders come from the greatest generation. Many elders come from who, by definition, have experienced a lot in life. And they want to be helpful. They want to be kind. They want to be responsive, particularly to people who are pretending to be members of their family or friends of members of their family. So it's not surprising to me given the amount of fraud that we see that's perpetrated against the public treasuries at the county level, the municipal level, and the state level. Why? Because the fraudsters are very, very sophisticated and constantly making adjustments. So Protect Week is important in that we kind of alert people to what's going on around the country, but it has a huge state impact. And I'm just here to say thank you to AARP for partnering with us and giving some scintilla of protection. And Ted, you know what a priority it is for your organization, and hats off to them. We do not have the answer right now. I think in Maryland we should set up a center for fraud detection so that anybody who has been defrauded can easily get as much information as is available on how to rectify and stop the fraud. And then number two, whether there's any kind of reimbursement for fraudulent loss of their savings. And then furthermore, we'll promote how to protect folks and urge people to, I hate to be abrupt and say, just hang the phone up, but that's what I mean. Just hang the phone up.
Yes, I agree with that totally. The Fraud Watch Network agrees with you, and not just me. But one other thing that I'd want to say, and I asking whether you agree, that if somebody asked you to pay a fee or a fine using credit cards or cryptocurrency, it's a fraud.
Correct. And anything over the phone, just don't do it. Nobody's going to call from the IRS. Nobody's going to call from the Comptroller's Office of Maryland saying you owe back taxes and people are going to be at your door tomorrow to arrest you if you don't give us your credit card number. No, nobody, that is like, no, just hang the phone up and call me, the comptroller, and I will set everybody straight on it. But I did want to mention one other thing that I'm pretty proud of. For 3 consecutive years in a row, I've delayed the tax date for Maryland taxpayers and small businesses from April 15th to July 15th. That's a 3-month, 90-day, interest-free, penalty-free loan of tax dollars that you owe the state. And that's proven to be enormously beneficial to the state's economy. I'm the only comptroller in the country that's done it because it requires a certain amount of digital nimbleness and flexibility. And, but I'm proud of that accomplishment at having utilized my authority to delay the tax date for 3 months, because it's allowed a lot of small businesses to get from the winter season into the summer season, and they have enough revenue, A, to pay their taxes. We saw a surge in tax payments, but also it gives them that little bit of extra time where they might otherwise be tempted to close their doors permanently.
COVID was really a sledgehammer, wasn't it?
Well, it was, but it also has some positive aspects in the sense that we learned that a lot of federal investment of dollars can be very helpful in allowing a state like Maryland to navigate its way through all of the ups and downs of the COVID pandemic. So we have experienced damage. We've obviously experienced loss of human life, which is just mind-boggling, and lots of people have residual injuries and ailments from COVID. But overall, we have emerged with our economy intact. I'm hopeful that we do not have a repetition, and I'm hopeful that the global situation internationally settles down so that we don't have the kind of drag on our economy that the Ukraine conflict has perpetrated. It's not Ukraine's fault, it's Russia's fault, but that's the reality that we're facing, that we hope both COVID can dwindle very rapidly, and furthermore, we can have peace and be conflict free around the world so that the global economy can get back to normal.
Boy, that's a rabbit hole I'd love to talk about, but don't dare get into right now. But you said there was fraud against the state. And I'm wondering, why do I care if somebody defrauds the state? And you might say how they defraud the state, but why do I care?
Well, first of all, you should care because it's taxpayers' dollars that are going directly to fraudsters. Out of $14 billion that Maryland has paid out in unemployment payments to our citizens, these are funds that are provided by the federal government and by the state government. They're taxpayers' dollars. We've spent $14 billion on our unemployed over the 2 years of the pandemic. $3 billion of that went directly to fraudsters out of state in Maryland. These are people that are just criminals that are filing multiple claims for unemployment claims and getting paid with taxpayers' money. It's not going to the unemployed, it's going to these crooks who don't live in Maryland. Many of them live in Russia and China. We know that fraud exists. We're not responsible for it as the Comptroller's office. We're in the tax area, but we know that our Department of Labor has just been pillaged by this. And people should be concerned for two reasons. Number one, it's public money. It's tax dollars that they have contributed. And number two, it's not going to people who are unemployed who actually need the money. It's going to out-of-state fraudsters and international fraudsters. So there are many reasons why not just elder fraud, but fraud in general should be fought on a very vigorous basis by the public treasuries. And that's because of it's taxpayers' money, and it should be going to people who are vulnerable. Instead, it's being made to pay for some oligarch's boat in Europe or something. But you get my drift. People should be outraged, frankly, that we don't have the necessary digital protections set up to confirm everybody's identity. That's the key. We have to confirm that it's actually you, Ted, who is making a request for disability funds. And, I'm thinking of suggesting that we set up a center for fraud detection in Maryland that will serve as a model to other states, where the state comptroller's office, whatever it is in another state, takes responsibility for not just the tax rolls, but also every other part of federal or state spending, to make sure that the money is not going to folks that are defrauding us.
How about prosecuting these people? Have you ever been successful with that?
It's almost impossible. We have had some successful prosecutions working with the Attorney General in Maryland, but that was generally for fraudulent tax preparers, which is another issue people need to be aware of and concerned about. But prosecution is very much, first of all, it's difficult to catch them. It's difficult to get jurisdiction, particularly if they're not in this country or not in the state of Maryland. And it's not really an effective deterrent, unfortunately.
So if you have a message for all the people that are going to watch this recording, what would it be?
It would be that every one of you has something to offer. I know, because I'm getting older myself. And we all have things that we can contribute because we've had life experiences. And I really want everybody who is on this or cares to watch this program, not just be limited to what Ted and I have been talking about, but realize that you have so much to offer. You've got so many rich experiences and so many important lessons that you've learned. And it's critical that we somehow figure out how to make sure our senior population is not isolated and separated from particularly our young people in our society. So any kind of work that AARP does or other groups do to integrate seniors and their life experiences with younger people, I'm a big fan of, and I hope to be with AARP participating in those kinds of programs in the near future.
Well, you've given me a perfect segue into my last question, and that is, you're going to be retiring, and I wonder, A, what your plans are, but B, do you plan to stay involved in trying to curtail financial problems for seniors?
Yes, in answer to your last question, yes, I will do that, and stay tuned on that. I'm finding that I was exhausted when I was comptroller. I'm still comptroller, but I've kind of wound down a little bit. So I'm much more pleasant to live with. I've been married for 42 years to someone that I have unfortunately taken advantage of. And I'm finding now that I'm returning to, not my childhood, but I'm returning to a time when it was much more magical for me, where I'm not exhausted by my work schedule, where I'm available, where I can take time to decorate the house for Halloween, for example, and greet all the little kids that are in costumes with a lot of energy and a lot of, warm sentiments. And so I don't have to do anything is the answer to your question as to what I'm going to do. But since I have so much to offer, like every senior person in my situation and others, we have so much to offer that I will stay relevant and stay connected to various parts of what's going on in Maryland. But I'm also liberated. I sleep at night. I don't wake up in a nightmare. I don't have to spend all day long being driven around by wonderful expert security people. Because at the end of the day, I'm kind of an empty shell. That's what it was after 16 years. I was just exhausted. Now I'm going to get to recharge my batteries. And I'm looking forward to being an AARP member for a long time. And Ted, I particularly want to thank you for your many years of service to this organization, your friendship with me, and it's been a pleasure. So thank you for this interview, and God bless.
The pleasure has been mine and ours. We certainly respect you. We respect what you've accomplished, and we wish you well in your new life.
Stay tuned. Thank you. All the best.
Okay.